We often think that the only thing we have to do to be successful is to solve the right problems, but experienced leaders know that as important as it is to solve the right problems, you also need to solve them in the right way. The concept of a Pyrrhic victory, or a victory achieved at a cost too great to justify the success, helps illustrate that idea. Knowing what the right problems to solve are is a big deal, but part of building an unstoppable team is knowing how to solve problems in such a way that we live to solve another day. So in this section, let's learn the first principles underlying how to do exactly that. When we talk about a state of point A, the way things are right now, and a desired future state, a state of point B, to put this another way, we have two states of order. Well, how do you get one state of order to turn into another state of order? Well, you have to drop out of order. You have to pass through a less ordered state, a state of disorder, or classically what we call chaos. So here we have two different kinds of states of reality. We have order and chaos, and we have a tendency to think of order as desirable, as good, that we want things to be in a state of order. And we also tend to think of chaos as bad, as a negative state, that we want to try to avoid as much chaos as possible. So as an example, your tribe is hanging around the campfire, enjoying each other's safety and company, and then a wolf enters the scene. The order of the familiar campfire is suddenly disrupted. Things happen, people start moving, chaos enters into that scene. That's the typical way that we think about chaos disrupting a desirable state of order, but they both have positive and negative aspects. For example, you have an outdated kitchen. It's in working order, but it's missing something. It's kind of out of date. So what do you do? How do you remedy the situation of a current state of order that's missing something? Well, what you do is you hire an agent of chaos, someone who can apply a bit of chaos to that existing order and turn it out of order. Okay? But being a good agent means you're not just an agent of chaos, you're also agents of order, capable of turning that reduced state into a new state of better order, a new order. In this case, the solution of fixing the kitchen's problem required passing through a state of chaos in order to achieve it. This is what you're doing every time you encounter a problem. You need to be able to properly apply the forces of chaos and order. This process of how to effectively solve a problem takes place over 8 stages that move you from an old state of order through chaos and into a new and better state of order. You can think of this cycle as a map. Every problem that you or anyone will ever face will take you through these 8 stages. For each step in the cycle, there are thousands of ways that you can lose your way and end up with an undesirable outcome, an undesirable state of order that isn't something that we want. But if you know the map, it's much easier to make sure that you avoid those pitfalls and make the choices you need to solve your problem in such a way that the new order that you end up in is a desired one, a strong starting place for your next cycle. And that's the key, solving your problems in such a way that each cycle, each problem-solving cycle that you go through makes you stronger and more capable of appropriately facing what comes next. So let's step through each of these steps one by one and help make sure you understand the nature of this cycle and how to follow that ideal path. Every problem follows a predictable pattern on its journey to be solved. This pattern takes place over a cycle with 8 stages that move you from order through chaos and then back again into a new order. The first stage is called you. This is you in the world that you occupy right now. You exist in the status quo. This is the state of the world where things are relatively satisfied and understood. But of course, things don't stay that way forever. Given any amount of time, you will notice that something seems to be missing. This is called the need stage, or the call. You realize that the state of order that you occupy is missing something. The example I like to think of is what happens every day right around 12:30. You're working hard, having a productive morning, and then suddenly your stomach begins to rumble. There's this little need calling out to you saying, I'm hungry. The important question for this stage is, do you hear the call? If you do, heeding that call takes you to a threshold, a place where you stand at the edge of the transition between order and chaos. You have to decide whether you will actually take the step to go forward. Now, why would someone hesitate to decide to move forward? Often people stand at this threshold and delay as long as possible the decision to cross over. And the first reason why is the next stage, which is called search. Let's use my lunch example again. I hear the need, right? I feel that feeling that says, I'm hungry. Well, now I have to make a choice. Am I going to act to resolve this need? What would that mean? Well, that would mean that I would need to enter into a stage where I would have to process the almost infinite options that exist to resolve that need. What am I going to eat for lunch? That could be anything. Do I eat leftovers? Do I cook something from scratch? Do I go to that place down the street? What's great and terrible about chaos is that it's the universe of potential. Literally anything can be possible, and all those possibilities need to be processed, and that takes effort. Imagine you just finished having a discussion with a team member. You thought things were going well, but you happened to notice what looked like an expression of dissatisfaction on their face. What did that little expression mean? That expression could be a call, an expression of the existence of a need. What do you do about that? Well, it's tempting to hear that call and to think, it's probably nothing. I don't need to go any further to search and figure out whether there's anything serious, do I? That would take work. But we all know what happens when we ignore those calls for too long. We might be trying to avoid having to confront chaos by ignoring those calls, but when that team member decides to maybe resign, we get our taste of chaos anyways, because now we're going to be searching for a replacement. Often, if you don't cross into chaos on your own, you will find yourself being thrown into chaos later, and that's an important pattern to be aware of. The calls that we hear in life are, in fact, a little bit of chaos calling. They are little alerts that are saying, there's a tiny bit of chaos here that needs your attention. And the best position to be in is to address chaos on your own terms while it's still little. If you can develop the habit of heeding those little calls when they are little, you can avoid a lot of the situations where you have to address the big calls. In any case, once you decide to act on a problem and you start doing the work to sort through all the possibilities that could resolve it, you need to be able to actually find the right solution. This stage takes a lot of competency and humility to do well. First, many people search for solutions, but are never able to find what they need, or they find things that don't work. They get lost, which connects them with bad outcomes. You can't find the right candidate, or worse, you hire the wrong person. Your pitch doesn't land well with the client, or your product doesn't connect with the market. These are all the outcomes for people who were unable to successfully find the answer to their problem. A lot of teams come here to die. But how do you make sure you find what you really need? How do you find the right solution to the problem? Competency and discipline is very important, but you also need a kind of humility. Think about these early attempts at flight. These guys are awesome. Lots of good work here searching for the solution. But despite all that good searching work, not much is going on here in terms of finding the right solution. Nobody is making any real progress. Often, the way you find what you need requires a kind of humility. It requires you to think, the way that I thought that this might work might not actually be the way that it will work. Many times, the true solution will require some part of you to die. That's often how you know you found the right solution. Some aspect of the current me needs to die, and a new version of me has to grow in its place. Finding the true solution can be hard. The hardest part about it is often having the humility to see it. But once you've found what you truly need, the work isn't done, you still need to take. You need to pay the price to make the sacrifice needed to realize that solution. Blockbuster is a good case study related to these stages. There was once a time when Blockbuster was a huge, thriving business, but now they've essentially ceased to exist. What happened? Well, as they sat in their prosperous state of order, one day they heard rumblings, a call that something was coming. These little whispers of a new technology bubbling up from the world of chaos called streaming video. Well, at first Blockbuster heard that call and said, yeah, we know what this is all about. And they came to the threshold of chaos and looked over the edge. And what did they see? Well, they saw all that work of search, find, and take. Wow, if we were to take this path, we would need to completely transform. We don't know anything about streaming video or developing software or running a network of global servers. That's a lot of work and sacrifice. And for what exactly? Why? And that's a very important word, isn't it? Because every time you hear why, you should think of the 5 colors of why, the 5 stages of aim. Why should we do all that work? Well, what do you think was Blockbuster's core why? What color was it? It's hard to say for certain, but it was probably the same why that most businesses find themselves oriented around. An orange, achievement-oriented why. We're trying to run a profitable business. We're trying to make more this quarter than we did last quarter. So when they stood at that threshold and looked forward at all the possible sacrifice and work that would be required, that aim colored their problem-solving process, and that needed sacrifice was perceived as an obstacle to that goal. So they simply didn't cross the threshold. They returned back to their current state of order. And what happened? That current state of order evaporated. That version of the world that Blockbuster built their home in no longer exists. There are 2 really important lessons here. One, what would have happened if Blockbuster's aim was different? What if instead of a goal oriented around increasing a number, their aim was something more like, movies are awesome. We like living in a world where people have access to movies. The world needs good ways to enjoy and share fun, entertaining, thought-provoking films and content with each other. Our mission is to help play a role in making sure that that kind of world exists. What would happen then? As they looked over that threshold, they might have seen all of that work and sacrifice and maybe had a chance to say, yes, that looks hard. There's a lot of transformation. Part of us may need to die in order to realize this transformation. But this is who we are. This is why we got into this work to begin with. There's a higher chance they would have been oriented properly to see that work and decide to commit. Second, this teaches us a really important lesson about order. We love order. It's warm and cozy. It's understood and in control. But you know what else order is? It expires. Believe me, you don't want to build a home in a world that will one day evaporate. It's a nightmare. And so in that context, your best friend actually is chaos. The safe harbor, the best place to be in that context when your world of order is evaporating is to be in the adventure party that is working their way through chaos. Often people want to know where the best place is to be. Do I want to be in order? Do I want to be in chaos? The safest place to be is actually not in a single place. The safest place to be is a way of being. The best way to stay safe is to stay awake and active in the process, to be paying attention to the wave, to the flow that guides you around in the cycle. Doing the work and the sacrifice to take, or you could also think to make the solution real, is a challenge. It takes a lot of work and sacrifice. But the reward for passing through that dark night is that you enter into a new dawn of order. You get to return back over the threshold. But here, the important question is, where do you return back to? You've gone into the cave, you've conquered the dragon, you've obtained the gold. What do you do with the prize that you've now rightfully won? That's a choice that you have to make, and it's one that is often counterintuitive. Fortunately, we've covered a lot of the concepts that can make this stage easier to understand. Think of the pattern like this. A hungry hunter leaves his community to find food. He goes into the woods to search, and he carefully searches and uses his understanding of the wild to find what he is looking for. He competently completes his hunt, and now he has obtained food. He now has a choice. What agent should he use this food to sustain? Does he use it to sustain himself, his local agent, him and his hunting party? Or is it food that is used to sustain the emergent agent that represents his entire community? If all of that effort and work is used to feed the agent of his community, what would happen? Well, we already know the answer to this question because it's our ancient history. The hunters that fed their tribes built stronger tribes, and those tribes built stronger communities. Members of the tribe, capable of doing things that the hunters could not, took care of the hunters in the ways that they needed, and we grew together as an entire species. Imagine you were the first inventor of the automobile. That's a huge invention. You did all that work to hear the call, to search, find, and take to produce the first automobile. Now what do you do with that incredible invention? You could, and you would have the right to do this, just keep that invention to yourself. Drive around the town, be the envy of all your friends and neighbors with this awesome, cool invention. But think about what would happen if you made a different choice. What if you decided that you wanted everyone to be able to enjoy this invention too? What would happen then? The world would change. Think about how many benefits are possible because mobile transport is available everywhere. You get to live in a world where grocery stores with food varieties from all over the world are possible. You live in a world where an ambulance can show up at your door in 5 minutes in an emergency. The entire country gets filled with roads that you didn't have to pay for. There are all kinds of ways in which a better world for you to live in just springs into being when you bring back your prize to the community. It's when you properly make your way through all these stages that you find yourself entering into now a new world that has changed. But it's the best kind of world that you can occupy because you've solved the problem in such a way that everyone involved says, hey, this was nice, let's do this again. You're in a new order that is now stronger and more prepared for what comes next. This is the best way to think about what it means to develop a good company culture. There's a lot of confusion today about what it means to have a good company culture. Your team exists because there are problems that you are trying to solve. What is that experience like for you and your team members as you identify the problem, come up with a solution to that problem, and then execute that solution? What does that feel like? There are 1,000 ways that you could go about solving that problem, but not all of them feel the same way. For example, a so-called Pyrrhic victory, you did successfully all solve the problem together, but you did it in such a way that everybody says, that was awful. That's the most simple way to think about what culture means. Are you solving your problems in such a way that everyone involved says, I liked that, I could do another one of those? The experience of working together to solve a problem, that experience is enjoyable, it's repeatable, it's sustainable across multiple projects across time. That's culture. Congrats on unlocking your fourth new ability, the story circle. It's one thing to know where you are going and what problems you need to solve to get there, but completing a journey requires solving more than just one problem. You need to solve a whole universe of problems, big and small, to arrive at your destination. The story circle is like a map to help you understand how to solve those problems in such a way that you can play the repeatable game, so that you can operate as a team, so that you are solving your problems in such a way that your team can persist. Every problem that you work through ends up in a new order in which you are existing in a way that is better than you were when you started. Use this framework every time you're trying to understand where you are. It will help illuminate for you the direction to go for the most sustainable outcome.